this very important meeting. The notice of extraordinary meeting of council has been sent out, and the purpose of the meeting is to give staff approval to send the draft annual plan out to public consultation. So if we could start the meeting, and Francois, with your permission, could you do the karakia, please?
Kia ora koutou, nā mihi mahana kia koutou, tuatahi nā mihi ki te rongorawa, nā nei nā mea katoa, e nā mate ko he ki te port haere atu rā. Te hongo mate ki te hongo mate, te hongo ora ki te hongo ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Kia ora koutou, haramai nau mā haramai ki tēnei hui. Kia ora, Bruce.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Do we have any apologies? Is there an apology from Paul?
I've just received a message from Paul, Your Worship. I believe he's an apology for lateness. He's just trying to access the meeting.
Okay. On that basis, we have an apology for lateness. All other councillors are present. Someone like to move that the. Thank you, Jane. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kendi. Those in favour?
Aye.
Okay. Right, the members' declarations of interest obviously can't be handed around the table today. However, it is available in the team system. If you have anything at all that you're worried about, that you're concerned about, talk to the Chief Executive or to the Corporate Services Manager, and they'll guide you on what is a conflict and what's not. Always good to be on the cautious side. So we'll move into item 4 on the agenda, and it's in 2 parts. And the first part is the adoption of the draft annual plan 2020-2021. It's on pages 4 to 53 of your agenda. What I'd like to say before I hand it to Corporate Services Manager is that this is a plan that's being put together in unusual times. And your role as leaders is to listen to the community, to make a judgment on what is necessary and what is not necessary, and at that point, move the consultation document out to the public. So it's a very important role. Paul, welcome. Technology is obviously taken care of there.
Yep, apologies for lateness.
Thank you. I'd now like to hand the adoption of the draft annual plan across to Leslie Crichton, Group Manager, Corporate Services. Leslie.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. I'm going to take the report as read. As His Worship has mentioned, this is not a usual annual plan that we're putting out for the community to respond on. It is a 0 rate increase, but with quite a lot of the expenses and revenues still within the actual operating expenditure. That means that obviously we're going to be underfunding these expenditures over the year, and we may need to use short-term funding to be able to do that. I will open up for any questions now.
Thank you, Leslie. Councillors will take the report as read, and we'll go around the table. And Councillor Neil, you're top left of my screen.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I think any questions I've had have already been answered by council staff, and thank you very much for some clarification there to the staff. Just a couple of comments. One regarding the ocean outfall on page 63. Just like to have it made clear that the environmental impact is not just from an iwi perspective, it's an environmental impact full stop as well. And that's also needs to be recognised in option 3. So I'd like those bits added in. And the cost of the ocean outfall working in with Western Milk Products. Is that 3.37 or is it 3.77 because we need to add the 400,000 as well? If that can just be made quite clear, and
Okay.
that would be good. Thank you.
So the total will be the 3.77 with the 400. So we will make that clear.
Thank you.
And we are
Thanks.
going to fix those typos that we've have been spotted. They'll be going, they'll be fixed for when we put the document out to the public.
Thank you.
We'll move to Councillor Kennedy.
Excuse me. No questions. I just say, look, I support the adoption of the draft annual plan and like to thank staff for the work they've done, despite threats from government ministers to produce no rate rise. I mean, the impact of this pandemic's massive district-wide, perhaps no more significant than in the bottom part of the southern ward, with industry built almost entirely on the ability of people to travel. There's massive job losses. There'll probably be more. It'll have a massive impact on the on ratepayers' ability to pay their rates. Rates freeze, given the current climate, is the minimum for me. Just for those that are watching, like, I encourage those that are having trouble in regard to their rates to contact council staff, or if people have another need, to seek support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Hartshorn.
Yes, Your Worship. I can't say anything more than Councillor Kennedy said. He's taken the words really, and yeah, we'll just go with that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davidson.
Yes, Your Worship. I just endorse Councillor Kennedy in terms of the job that the council have done, and councillors with their input. It's been really good teamwork and well done.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I endorse those comments as well. I think Council has really been sensitive to the mood of the region as a consequence of the pandemic, and responded by the zero rate increase. Prior to this, we of course were looking at a reasonably significant rate increase, and I think it needs to be made clear, in fairness to the ratepayers of our district, that in reducing this, in producing a zero rates rise this year, doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be what is going to happen for the next few years, because as I understand it, it's likely to be that rates will need to be increased reasonably considerably in subsequent years to effectively pay for the 0% rate increase this year. So I think we need to be as clear as we can and as transparent as we can to our ratepayers, that whilst we are responding in the way we are, the issues that may have compelled us to impose a rates increase in the current year haven't gone away and will rear their heads down the track. And I'm wondering, to you, Leslie, if you're able to indicate what the implications might be in subsequent years, say years 2 and 3 here on out, from the zero rates increase this year.
Through the chair, yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. This is not going to be possible to continue at such a low level in the future. There will be costs in that we've taken out of this year's plan that we will need to put back in next year, and those costs will be continuing. So such things as loan repayments, we've taken those out for this year. So for the new budget year, we won't be making any loan repayments for current debt. That has reduced what the increase would have been fairly significantly, nearly $1 million. So what I would expect we will need to do is to actually repay those along with current repayments over perhaps a 3-year period in the future.
Thanks, Leslie. Deputy Mayor Carruthers, any other questions there, or anything else you'd like to say?
Just to follow that up, Your Worship, if I may, to Leslie. Leslie, are you able to indicate what impact there might be on the rates for the next couple of years?
No, not really. Only that they'll increase dramatically from where we are this year. I would say we would be certainly going back to what we were looking at, which was something like 8.5%. Other than that, I can't really say. It all depends on what actually goes into the plan at the time, the long-term plan next year, and that will be determined by council and the community.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Martin.
Kia ora, Your Worship. Thank you. Thanks for those questions so far. A lot of what I've raised has been appropriately dealt with in our workshop sessions and also by emails back from staff. So thank you very much for that, staff and councillors. I do think Deputy Mayor Carruthers has raised a really valid point, and it is important that people are aware of the positive and negative implications of a 0% rate rise, particularly around debt funding and what that means in terms of debt repayment. And the perception could be that we have made cuts that are sustainable, but it appears from all the messaging we're hearing that those cuts that have been made in order to achieve a 0% rate rise are unsustainable long term. So I think ratepayers submitting on that would be useful, and I'm not sure if that's part of the consultation document discussion we're going to have next. But in terms of the layout of the annual plan, I think it's a culmination of the work that's happened to date, and it fairly reflects, I think, council's input and staff's work. So I'm quite comfortable with the draft annual plan being adopted for public consultation. I guess my other questions will come when we discuss the consultation document, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Francois.
Nothing more to add. Everyone's summed it up really nicely. You're happy to support the draft consultation document going out. Just a couple of comments around. I do want to thank our staff, Simon, you and the team. Having to crunch numbers under these circumstances would have been tricky. So I appreciate where you've got to today, but I think it backs up what Deputy Mayor Carruthers was saying, is that we need to make sure that it's very clearly communicated that there will be a cost somewhere down the track. Got it.
Thanks, Francois. Councillor Cogan.
Yeah, look, I just also, like everyone's doing, but acknowledge to Simon, the executive team, and any other input from other staff within council. Like, this has been a huge task for you guys to undertake over the last few weeks, and I really appreciate the time and effort you've all put into being able for us to be able to provide this 0 rate increase out to the community. And I think in some way I'd like to see that acknowledged, and whether that can also be done, as much as I want for the ratepayers to understand that this is only a short-term situation, I also I feel that we should take this time to have it, hopefully even through the media, acknowledged the work that the council have put into being able to have that achieved. So well done to you guys for all of this. We all know it's unprecedented times. Not all councils are able to be doing what we've done. Yeah, so it's great short-term work for us.
Thanks, Councillor Cogan. Paul.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have a lot of comments to add to that. However, just note that to achieve a 0% rate rise is, I haven't seen that for many, many years in local government anywhere. The trouble with this, of course, is that the payment is postponed until next year and future years, and but that probably also means that it's incumbent on the council to look even harder at budgets over the next year. It doesn't need to be necessarily the same going forward, because I think it's going to be a long time before we're out of this mess. So the council will need to reflect on that over the next 12 months. I've got further comments on the consultation document, but as for the plan, yes, support it's been released.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, an exceptional amount of work has gone into this report under very trying times. I'd like to thank all the team for all the work they've put into this. Many of my questions have actually already been answered, and I'm happy to support the plan. But I just have one question that, for me, it's just a clarification, really. Page 37 under the benchmarks. Can I just have an explanation on why we don't meet the essential services benchmark at this time? I just struggle to understand that one, that was all.
Yeah, the essential services is basically capital expenditure on such as roading, the three waters, for renewals expenditure. So it's basically what we're spending that's coming from our depreciation reserves. So although we have projects in our statements and plan for those essential services, they don't necessarily mean that they're renewals. So it could be that some of those renewals with the better asset information that we have been deferred. So that means that we haven't actually met that benchmark. But that doesn't mean to say we're not carrying out work. So it could be that we've got new assets that we're spending money on through the plan, rather than needing to carry out those renewals.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you. That's all
Just
from me.
through your worship, just a comment on that. It was raised through the long-term plan that council didn't know a lot about their underground assets, particularly the condition of those assets. We couldn't commit a lot of funding to replacement costs during that process. It's fair to say 2 years down the track, we have a very good knowledge of what we need to do now. Definitely to recalibrate through the next long-term plan, that asset renewal program. We've already started that work now, and we'll be presenting that to council through those workshops in future.
Thanks.
Improvement in that space.
Thanks, Simon. Before I move on to the next part, the adoption of the draft consultation document, is there any other questions that in relation to the draft annual plan, or can I move on?
Can I just make a comment, Your Worship? I'd just like to acknowledge, like every councillor here, the work that council staff have done, particularly Emma and Leslie, taking the finance team through this. It has been a lot of rework, as councillors would appreciate. We had a very clear, I suppose, way forward going back 6 weeks, and to do this rework, which most of it's been done outside our finance system because it's had to be manually manipulated. The amount of hours gone into doing that, I just want to acknowledge finance team and Emma, particularly on the work that they've done in that space. So thanks, councillors, for the kind words.
Thanks, Simon. Who would have believed that when we were elected in October of last year, that the annual plan this year would be done by a group of people at home without the support of the systems, without the support of the people in the building? It's quite incredible. But here we are. It's looking like we're on target time-wise. staff, pretty good. You've done a great job. No question about it. I'd like now to move to the adoption of...
Your Worship, just sorry if I could just point one thing out. It's probably been fixed, but on page 10, tēnā koutou is spelt wrong in great big letters.
Leslie, are you onto that?
That may have been picked up already.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Yes,
next part
the
of
answer.
the next part of the meeting talks about the adoption of the draft consultation document, and it's on pages 54 to 75 of your agenda. And Councillor Kennedy.
Sorry, I'll just box tick in here, Your Worship. Do we not have to first adopt the draft annual plan and then move on to the consultation document?
Leslie?
The draft plan first, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Do we have a mover for the adoption of the draft annual plan?
So move. Oh.
Okay, we've got Councillor
Race.
Kennedy has moved it. It's seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Thank you, councillors. Now, and thanks for that, Councillor Kennedy. I'll move on to the second stage, and I'll hand that over to Leslie Crichton, Group Manager, Corporate Services.
Can we move this on for Emma to talk about, please?
Absolutely. Welcome, Emma.
Good afternoon, councillors and your worship. So I would like to take the report as read. I think that you've all had a good look through the actual draft consultation document itself, and it sounds like there are some questions on that. So if you would like to open the floor to questions, then I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Emma. Well, councillors will take the report as read and open it up for discussion. And Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Emma. Yes, my query before actually related to this part of the agenda. Apologies for that. So I've already made those comments, just a couple of things regarding the ocean outfall, and happy for it to go out for consultation. I do urge all members of the public to take the opportunity to feed back into the process with all your comments. And yeah, other than that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. A good, clear message there. If people, if people participate, it'll work well. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Could I defer to our two iwi representatives to perhaps speak on the ocean outfall project?
Paul.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, you won't be surprised to hear that that was the bulk of my comment was about the ocean outfall project and the wording of some of this and the way that it's structured. As we discussed in committee last week, that the consultation document was to be as neutral as possible, and while this does outline the options, it's just the way that it's structured is perhaps a little bit leading in parts. But in particular, what I'd like to talk about here was on page 63, sorry, where it says in the second column, about halfway down, and it refers to the benefits of joining the council joined in with the Westland Milk Products ocean outfall. And it says, however, Westland Milk Products has already received consent for their project with no serious objections from iwi, as the treated waste does not contain fecal or human pathogens. I think that's really an unfair comment to put in there. It makes it sound early in that consultation as though iwi were happy enough with the ocean outfall, and although it was signed off with the Westland Milk one, as I understand it, that's an entirely different matter when you're talking about putting tackle water into the pumping tackle water into the sea. Is an entirely different matter, and that needs to be reflected in this document.
That statement can be removed.
I think it would be better to be removed. Thank you, Emma. The next page, it says effluent disposal to the sea is objectionable as there might be contaminants in the discharge water if resource consent conditions are breached. Well, I think that's probably the understatement of the year. Of course, there'll be contaminants in the discharge every day. We need to be very clear that this is what we're talking about in this discharge. It's not just waste coming from the dairy factory, it is the waste water that's coming from the sewage ponds. And that is what, as was explained last week, was the objection of iwi. In terms of the table there that has some of the outlines the options, deep bore at the current site, then deep bore at an alternative site, and then the wetland installation. I thought that the wetland installation was the first one mentioned, and that should be therefore the first one on that table, because it's yes, just to give the various options there, and to be also clear that the standalone ocean outfall pipeline that's mentioned as another option is just as objectionable to iwi as the shared pipeline. So I just wanted to make that clear. I also felt that on that same page, and in the first column at the bottom, a new resource consent will be required with stringent monitoring requirements for land-based wastewater treatment. Application for such consent will be more time-consuming and costly for council. I felt that was an unfair comment without also putting to proceed with the ocean outfall project is likely to end up in the Environment Court and the great cost that's attached to that. So I think if you're going to say one, you need to say the other as well. And the next paragraph, it talks about the financial analysis of the total project cost, the total operating cost and life cycle cost of a 50-year lifetime. But the financial analysis, it doesn't say who that was by. And Simon might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the one that was done by the staff. And I'm not questioning the abilities of the staff, but it just needed to say that that's the financial analysis is by the staff.
Yeah.
Any project on the following page, any project is still subject to successful resource consent application by the council, which includes iwi consultation and approval. That is true, but if that statement is to go in, it needs to say that clearly that iwi have made clear their view on the ocean outfall, be that with a shared ocean outfall or standalone ocean outfall.
Okay.
That was all my comments on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Francois.
Yeah, just reiterating everything that Paul said, and I think the important, just the highlight, the one I want to highlight again is the resource consenting side of things, which you touched on. And also there needs to be some, I think, some more analysis done around these land-based ones. I don't think there's a significant amount of information or enough information for people to make an informed decision. And I think it needs to be clear too that, you know, like Paul said, and we said at our last environment court costs will be significant as well. So yeah, I don't want to bleat on, but in the same, we're in the same boat as McArthur. Kia ora.
Thanks, Francois. Back to Councillor Kennedy.
No, obviously I did have some concerns around the ocean outfall in that consultation. I think it's worth pointing out that the Fox and Franz Joseph Glacier, the community rates proposal, now that was put in place well in advance of the current situation that we find ourselves in. And the Ross Endowment Land Fund is just it's a box ticking exercise, I believe. But other than that, happy and hope that all ratepayers have their say and get involved with the process so we can deliberate and feel the vibe of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just a little bit unclear now. Iwi have made it clear about the outfall. I'm just a little bit unclear about what have they made clear.
Simon, could you pick that up, please?
Obviously, EU have made it clear that they wouldn't support an ocean outfall. That's saying that we're obviously looking for the whole community input, not on top of EU as well. So we have to take full consensus to find the way forward. So there's a lot of factors involved, and Paul's highlighted a lot of them. But when we consider cost as a big factor as well, we know that a land-based option, if we had to relocate the ponds, etc., is going to cost us more than other opportunities that we have in front of us. We just have to work through this and get the consensus of the community as a general way forward. That's my answer. Paul, do you want to add to that?
Thank you. Yes, Your Worship. So what we have made clear is that ocean outfall of any description of discharging of tackle water or sewage water into any body of water is unacceptable and repugnant. So that's what is made very clear with this. Totally accept what Simon says, that it's for the whole community to decide. You know, this is the iwi perspective, is that we find it objectionable, but it's what the whole community decides is acceptable in terms of environmental terms plus cost and all those other factors. We understand that and we accept that. We're just making clear what our view is. As was noted at the previous meeting on this, there's a similar case in South Canterbury where Yili have another dairy factory, and with an ocean outfall that's much longer than the one that's being built here, and that has been strongly opposed by two local Ngāi Tahu Runanga in South Canterbury, Waihao and Arowhenua. And that's only for the dairy discharge. That's not even talking about putting human discharge in with the dairy discharge. And so whichever path the council chooses to go on with an ocean outfall is going to draw the attention of Ngāi Tahu tribally, not just locally. So it's just something that has to be taken into account, and we would be remiss not to alert the council to this at this early stage. Perhaps another way to look at it is that this is an opportunity. This is what we are saying as iwi, is that this should be seen as an opportunity to think ahead and to find another solution for Dirren sewage, rather than let's go for the cheapest option, and therefore that is just bung a hole in the pipe and it out there at 2 Mile and put the wastewater from the sewage ponds into the dairy outfall, and away we go. This is an opportunity to get rid of that unsightly sewage ponds at the entrance to town. This is an opportunity to have something that's environmentally acceptable for future generations. Sewage ponds is the technology of a long time ago, and the wetland opportunity is something that needs to be fully explored. There is room in Hokitika and around the edges of town, the back of the airport, and places where this could be done, and it doesn't need to involve any outfall to the sea and discharge to the sea at all. And I just think it's an opportunity for the council to look at this in a new way.
Thank you, Paul. Francois.
Yeah, I think there's also, we need to recognise as well, I think some of this is a bit of a hangover from previous councils and administration. The last set of resource consents that went through to continue the current location was supported by iwi, because there was a commitment made that these ponds would go, and there would be a land-based or mechanical-based operation looked at. So that consent, I think, was 10 or 15 years, and our position hasn't changed on that. There's been enough time, in our view, for this issue to be addressed previously. Now, we said very clearly that you need to start work on this now, not wait 10 years and then want to come back for a resource consent to give you some more time to get this issue addressed. So there's been a considerable amount of time already gone by that's, by the looks of it, has been wasted, to be fair. So we have supported council previously to give them some time to get this issue sorted. And now we're in this position, which is why we're pushing back on this, on what's happening now, because it's, in my view, it's had plenty of time to be addressed.
Thanks, Francois. Councillor Davison, back to you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's made it very clear. I've got a lot of clarity there now, and yeah, let's move forward. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Martin.
Kia ora, Your Worship. Thank you very much. Okay, so the first one is, yeah, I think the ocean outfall has been discussed considerably, and it is out there for public consultation. So I think people in reflection have the opportunity now to put forward their views in terms of whether they support the ocean outfall concept, or whether they would like council to do more investigative work for a land-based discharge or a wetland-based discharge. So I think, and would encourage council to really seek community feedback around that matter. It's probably the most significant matter within the annual plan. So what that looks like in terms of Emma, you'd have your biggest finger on the pulse in terms of active, proactive engagement for submissions in regards to the ocean outfall. I think it is comparing apples to oranges though, so that is hard for people to make a fully informed choice, because one is quite developed in terms of the business case, and one is still in its infancy. So I don't think people should be expected to say which do you prefer, and decide. They should be, I think the question is really, do you prefer an ocean outfall based in the, with these conditions, or do you prefer council doing more investigation, more thorough investigation to alternative systems? So that's on the ocean outfall from me. I'm sure we're going to get lots of feedback and submissions regarding that, and we will consider them appropriately. One about we discussed it at workshop, but with the Regent Theatre, I think we possibly are remiss without putting that in as an item for consultation. I mean, I moved to and seconded, sorry, the adoption of the draft annual plan, but I do think we should be seeking community feedback around the Regent Theatre's level of grant funding, financial contribution from the ratepayers. I think we should, even if we're not having it as a lead item for consultation, we should throughout the engagement process could be asking for feedback on that. And
Can I just interrupt you there, Councillor Martin?
Yeah.
Leslie, you had your hand up there.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. Regarding the Regent, yeah, we took the extra funding out on direction from council. That's what we're going out to, within the plan. Ratepayers community can all submit to put that back in. And that's possible, but what they will have to do is pay for it next year.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that, Group Manager Corporate Services, Leslie. I understand that, and I think it's just about, I guess, reminding ratepayers, if we don't as a lead item for consultation, so what else do we want to know about? I think council made that decision, that majority decision, to reduce the funding. No, I'm not disputing that. It's just about maybe providing the community with an opportunity to feedback. And the other one was around the Franz Joseph Fox Glacier Community Development Officers. That I sent a technical question in, which was answered, thank you. But that was just around people getting their head around the concept of, if they opt for it, the payment for that is actually deferred for a financial year. So although they receive the benefit from that in the next year's annual plan, the paying of that through rates doesn't kick in until 1st of July the year following. And therefore, if they opt to have it for another year ongoing, it actually means a double hit to their rates. So I think people need to be really aware of that we, even though they might be ticking, yes, we support it, and oh, it's good because it doesn't mean an increase to our rates. Well, actually it will, it's just deferred. And then it will be double if the community want to keep it ongoing. So it took a bit of me trying to make that connection through the consultation document, but I think I've got my head around it, that if they say yes, they want it, they get the service, council cash funds that service for that 12 months, but then it recoups the cash via the rate strike of 2021-22. Is that correct, Leslie, through the chair?
Yes, that's correct. Any extras that we put in this plan will need to be rated for next year. And if that's ongoing, then obviously in that first year, next year, there's essentially a double rating requirement on that. So yeah, exactly right. And that would be the same for the Regent. But we feel that we're not going out to ask these things. We're expecting that the extra requirements that the community are looking for, that they would actually put submissions in to put in our plan, rather than us going out to consult with it, because we don't want to have to get communities paying double for just about everything next year. And the Regent is mothballed at the moment, and it will be for some time, we believe. So why would we be wanting our communities? That is up to them. So we're not going to put it in our plan, because that's the direction council have given us.
Thank you, Leslie. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I just have a couple of technical questions now, and one I think you just answered in your response to that, which was around submissions. So, so submissions and responding to submissions is quite a process in itself. But what I'm sensing is that if council agrees to considers submissions favourably that result in additional operational expenditure, that won't necessarily impact the zero rates concept for this year. But what it will do is push that cost into the next financial year. So for example, if someone submits wanting, a grant for $5,000 for something, then if council says, by resolution decides that that's something worth doing, the methodology and the framework that the plan's built on will mean that that is funded from next year's rate strike. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Whatever we put in this year and any extras we put in the plan through from submissions will be rated for in future years. The rates, this is why it's been very difficult to do this plan, because the rates are actually separate to the budget.
Councillor Martin, can I interrupt here? I'd like Councillor Hart, I'll come back to you. Councillor Hart has another engagement. I'd like to pass it to Councillor Hart to get her input.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, sorry, I have to jump off. I've got a 1:45. I'm already late. I just want to thank Emma and the team for the work on the consultation document, and I actually have no further questions. So happy to support that. But yeah, sorry, I have to jump off.
That's fine, Councillor Hart. Back to Councillor Martin. Sorry, Jane. Councillor Neal.
I was just waving goodbye to Anna. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
We'll give Anna a wave.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin, how are you going on your questions?
Head around the fact that the budget's very different to the rate strike this year, and I think Leslie's done a great job of articulating that to councillors.
Thank you. You appear to have disappeared. Not sure what's happened there. Move on.
Everyone looks good to me.
Thank you. Francois, any matters outside of the ocean outfall?
No, comfortable with everything else. Thank you.
Great stuff. Councillor Cogan.
No, I'm all good with everything that's actually in the proposal at the moment. I'm a little bit like everyone else. I think the hot topic of conversation with everyone will be the ocean outfall. I guess what's good about that is that they've outlined one proposal with more accurate costings, but it's also intimated with the land, if we were to go for the other option, that there would need to be further investigation involved in that. I just think it's important at this stage that the public they fully understand what both options are. My biggest concern around them is, and it's not that I completely agree with the ocean outfall happening, but in the current environment that we're in, my concerns are more around that people are going to go for the cheaper option just simply because of the current economic situation. They're going to be feeling more pressured financially into going with that, because for them individually it is a cheaper option. That's just my thoughts, but the rest of the consultation document, it's all good.
Thanks, Councillor Cogan.
Through your worship, can I just make one comment on that? If we did go for an alternative other than the ocean outfall and went land-based, we're actually deferring any major costs until the back 4 years down the track, basically. So 3 to 4 years down, because most of the costs will be in building something. and we have a resource consent that expires in April 26. So we have 5 years to go before we even get close to actually spending any significant money.
Thanks, Simon. Councillor Hartshorn, you put your hand up there. You're on mute there, Ian.
Yes, Your Worship. Just as Councillor Martin has brought to the attention, is it possible to get a letter to send out to both community chairs down here, Fox and Franz, just pointing out the rating structure to make them very aware about the if they were going for an increase for the CDOs, that how it is going to be paid. It might just enlighten them a wee bit on that.
Leslie.
And
yeah, that's what the consultation document is for. We're not going to be sending separate letters out on a consultation. We can perhaps clarify some of the wording, but it will be through the consultation document.
Okay, you just can't send one letter to a chairperson so the community can understand it? No.
It's all part of the consultation. It's an annual plan. It's that way it's kept within one area, legally follows the Act. We're not going to be sending out separate letters again.
Okay.
We'll make it clear in the consultation document.
We'll leave that up to the Southern Councillors to sort that out. Ross Endowment Fund, well, that's just that's a given. Just the outfall structure and I suppose a deal come memorandum of understanding. That's going to have to be that's the only big concern for that people might need to get their head around how it's going to be structured. And I know there'll be a deal of, you know, some percentage of the pipe and everything like that, but just the ongoing maintenance and everything like that. If people need to, hopefully the voters or the ratepayers can see that clearly and they look into it and say what they need to say on that. To me, the bore sewage system is never going to be a goer, and like Councillor Madrick said, or Paul Madrick, that the emphasis should be on the wetlands, I would have thought. But when you do that, you still have to look at the other side of things, that you're starting to put a wetlands at the end of an airport, and then you end up with bird strikes and all sorts of things like that. But as a whole, yeah, I'm happy with the whole plan, and we need to move forward and let the people out there make their decision.
Thanks, Councillor Hartshorn. Paul, you raised your hand there before.
Yeah, unmute. Thank you, Worship. I just was going to say in relation to Councillor Cogan's comment that people will probably gravitate towards the cheap option. And at a time like this, that's human nature. But I would just urge people to step back and have a look at this and in the bigger picture, really, of where this might be. As Simon said, the existing consent has another 5 or 6 years to run. As was seen with Franz, although it expires in 2026 or thereabouts, it is possible to get extensions to that as long as the council is well advanced with planning. So there is time. It doesn't have to be done tomorrow. It doesn't have to be decided, you know, that this is, or the decision that's made for this annual plan doesn't need to affect the rates for the next year, for instance, of ratepayers. They need to think and looking at this at the big picture and in many years to come, and the cost of that will be spread over intergenerational. And this is a chance to make such a big change.
Through your
Thanks,
worship, can I
thanks,
just
Paul.
respond? One other thing that we have to be well aware of, if we do decide that we want to relocate, to a new site completely, any costs or any budget we have towards the current ponds would have to be cancelled, obviously, relitigated. So we have some considerable capital costs in terms of upgrades already assigned to that infrastructure. So we're going to have to actually revisit that completely. Just had to highlight that because there are significant costs already in our budget to go towards upgrading those ponds.
Thanks, thanks, Simon. And we move on to Councillor Martin. Did you get cut off, or did we manage to get to the end of your questions?
Sorry, Your Worship. I think I did get cut off, but I was nearing the end of my questions. I just had one, and hopefully you can hear me. Our internet is quite patchy at the moment. Can you hear me all right?
No problem at all.
Okay, good. One was just around the elephant in the room that we've talked about, and that was commercial rating. I think it's fair to say, and just to acknowledge the work of the staff that's gone in this area, and just to clarify some of the rationale around that. Although it's slightly outside of the consultation document, it has strong implications for the rating information database. And I think, the philosophy that sat behind that was to ensure that all commercial operators were identified as such and rated appropriately. And for some people, that's going to mean a dramatic shift in their rates. But given the current economic climate and the considerable correspondence we've had from commercial operators within the district, I think it is appropriate that we're exploring this work, and that there is going to be quite a bit of discussion over during the course of this annual plan around what being commercially rated does mean for some people in terms of their business and going forward. But I guess I want to put it out there because I do appreciate the work staff are doing. It is in response to other feedback from the public around addressing this area. And I think long term, it will help address a number of inaccuracies unfair applications, what people perceive to be unfair applications of rating policy. So yeah, thank you, Simon, Leslie, and your team for the work that is going on to identify commercial premise and business operations on split use properties. So yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. And the final one, Deputy Mayor Carruthers.
Sorry about that. Yep, thank you, Your Worship, but no, nothing further or useful to add.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Carruthers. On that basis, we've moved the first recommendation, which was that Council adopts the draft annual plan 2020-21 attached as Appendix 1. That's been moved and seconded. I'd invite a councillor to move recommendation B, that Council instructs the Chief Executive to make the draft annual plan available to the community from the 7th of May 2020.
Just a question there, Your Worship. How are the changes which we've been discussing? Will they be added to that, or how do we?
Yeah, just with minor alterations, Your Worship. Part B, as discussed today.
So we have a mover in Councillor Cogan. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Davidson. All those in favour? Those against? There's no one against. All those. Look, the resolution is passed. and the Chief Executive is instructed to send the document out with minor changes to the public. Thank you very much for attending today's meeting. There are some significant discussions to take place, and there's certainly none greater than the ocean outfall. That's how it feels to me, based on feedback from councillors. Congratulations to the staff. When we started this process, we were at 8.5%, and I was actually relieved because I was thinking 11 or 12. Here we are now, we're at a 0 rate increase. Every capital project, and the capital projects are critical to the rebuild of our economy as we go forward. Every capital project is still intact, and that's a really big plus. So to all of the staff, thank you so much. I must say that over this process, I've enjoyed the input from all of the councillors. Every councillor has been involved. There's been cooperation and harmony that for me has been just such a great relief, and I'd like to congratulate you all. But on the at this point, it's my role to close the meeting unless there's any other matter, and thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, that's cool. Thank you, guys.
Di, you could cancel the live streaming now, please.